right, guys. Hello. Welcome to Get a Grip with Kendall Roosing. We're here with Giancarlo Bodoni. Did I say it right?
Yeah, you did.
Perfect. All right. So we're here with Giancarlo, the current ADCC champion here in Austin, Texas. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Super excited. So you guys probably already know who Giancarlo is, but just in case you don't, I'm going to make sure you guys know all the good details. So Giancarlo's got his black belt in 2020 from Lucas Lepri, but he moved to Texas now. Is training with Danaher and Gordon at New Wave. He's from Miami originally, 27 years old. Got to ADCC by winning East Coast Trials in 2021 November. I remember watching that, and it's pretty intense to have somebody win one of the trials and then actually win the tournament, because normally the trials winners just kind of get like eaten in their first match or two, right?
They get fed to the wolves.
They get fed to the wolves. They're like going with the number 1 and 2 seeds, right? So came out and won ADCC this year in Vegas. 2021, NoGi Pan Champ. That was 2021 or 2022?
That was
belt this
NoGi
year?
Pans 2021, yeah.
2021, yeah. Okay. And then at brown belt, because you haven't been a black belt for that long, so brown belt won gold at the NoGi Worlds, silver at the Gi Worlds, and gold at NoGi Pan. So when's the last time you had a gi on? You train? Well, you teach in the gi.
Yeah, I teach in the gi every night, so that's nice because I'm not going to forget everything that I spent the last 15 years of my life learning.
That's good.
But
you came from Lepri, so obviously heavy gi.
Yeah, my whole career was pretty much heavy gi, and like we would have no gi class like once a week. Or sometimes we would like take the gi off and like roll after class, things like that. But there was no like formal, like I never had like formal no-gi training until now. And like leading up to trials, I would have like basically run my own no-gi sessions. At Bernardo's where I was training and teaching. Okay.
So coming into trials, because when did you move to Texas?
October 15th. Of last year.
So literally a month before ADCC Trials.
Yeah,
East Coast.
I think I had like 3 weeks or something like that.
Oh my gosh. So before that, you were where? You were at Bernardo's?
So I was teaching at Bernardo's in Boston for like 2 years. And then for like the last, I knew I was going to do trials and I knew I wanted to focus more on no-gi. So he basically like let me have my own sessions so Bernardo's is like kind of a weird gym. It's like a house. It's like an old like New England house. Okay. And so like the downstairs and the upstairs, they're just all matted, but they would never use the upstairs mats. They would only use the downstairs.
Oh shit.
So I would do my own sessions every night with like a group of students that were like good training partners for me. And I would like teach them and also use them for training.
Nice.
And then my goal was to do the trials. I mean, we did a bunch of tournaments, even like I did that for like NoGi Pans, but like the goal was to do the trials. And then after that, actually right before trials, I ended up moving.
Okay. Did you feel a big change in the last few weeks going into trials, or you kind of already had everything set up the way you needed?
I mean, there was definitely like, it was very good for like tactically, like to make sure that like I understood like the rule set and like kind of what I was getting into. And it was good just to have somebody like to put the finishing touches, like to have John put like the finishing touches on my camp. But like I was already training with that in mind, with trials in mind. So I was in like fight shape already. And then we kind of like put the finishing touches over here.
Nice. Okay. I'm going to adjust your mic because I think I had a short person here for you last night. Okay. Perfect. It was bothering me so much. I was like, that doesn't look right. Okay. So before we jump into all the specific questions, what does it mean to you to have a grip on your life when you feel like everything's going how you want?
For me, I think it's just like every single day you should wake up with a sense of purpose, where and that's kind of a weird thing because, you know, does life have a meaning like in general, right? But you have to set something for yourself to do every single day. You can't just wake up and just, okay, what am I doing today? So like for me, like every single day I wake up, I know I at least have to do one thing. Like even if I have nothing else going on, I know I at least have to train. So like for me, that's like the one thing that I have to do regardless, without fail. And then I try as best as I can to set goals in my life where I have more things to fill in throughout the day, where I have a purpose that I'm going towards. So if every single day you're moving with a sense of purpose, regardless of whether or not, you know, you're moving at the rate that you want, or, you know, you have money, or you're succeeding, or you're accomplishing your goals, at least you have a purpose, you have a direction. Right. So I think a lot of people, like, regardless of the field that they live in, they lack a sense of direction in life. And so if you have a sense of direction, a sense of purpose, a sense of something that you enjoy doing, and you want to do it, I think that's a good grasp of like life.
That makes sense. So it's interesting because obviously you have your career as an athlete. So when you're talking about purpose and you're saying the one thing I have to do that day is train, to people who don't have being an athlete as their career, they're like, okay, yeah, like, you know, it's a little bit of a different vein of purpose, but you're working towards your career every day, no matter what. And then it sounds like to me, the little things that, or the other things that that's the skeleton. And then as long as you're filling other things that are moving you towards your other big goals, then you're feeling purpose driven.
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And everybody's like, so like, I'm kind of lucky, like, cause I found jiu-jitsu and I've always been active and done martial arts, but I found like this purpose early in life, and I've always enjoyed doing it. I didn't have the same goals that I have now back then, but it's weird for a lot of people that, you know, maybe they're later in life, you know, they don't have like an athletic career that they want to pursue or something like that. So I understand that it is difficult, but you got to at least set something, like choose something, and then pick that, and you can always change it. But you know, I think like that's like something that for me is important. Like every single day I have like a direction that I want to go.
I love that. That's one of my favorite things to say. Like if I'm in uncertainty or like making a big decision, I'm like, I can always change my mind.
Yeah.
I can always change it later.
It's hard for me too, because I'm super indecisive by nature. So like just that thing, like just make a decision and figure it out.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
you're going to learn something regardless. So even if you decide to change your mind, there's no time wasted.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's good. Perfect. So give us the 10-minute, so most of the people I ask for the 10-minute life story, I know a lot about them, but I'm really curious about this because you really, which you'll know, kind of exploded onto the scene in ADCC. The people who are like jiu-jitsu aficionados know who you were, but for a lot of the jiu-jitsu community, they were like, who is this dude training with Gordon? Like that was your name. Like, who's this guy training with Danaher and Gordon? Obviously, you were successful before you got there, but this was a new entry kind of into the spotlight, even for me, someone who's been training my entire life. So tell us your 10-minute life story of how you got to where you are
now. Let's see. So, I mean, I grew up in South Florida. I was born and raised. I was born in Miami Beach, and I grew up there. I lived there until I was about like 19 or 20. And I started doing jiu-jitsu around 12. So, I mean, I always did martial arts pretty much since I was like 5 years old. I did like traditional martial arts, karate and taekwondo, and with no like real athletic goal or like anything like that. It was just like an activity for me. And I was always an active kid. I did like sports, not necessarily so much on teams, but I always played sports. I was always like outside, like doing like active stuff with my friends and things like that. Do you have
siblings?
Yeah, I have 2 younger siblings.
So you guys were doing stuff together, or was it kind of like your own thing?
No, together. Okay. Like me and my brother were together a lot. My sister as well. She's a little younger than us, but she even like, so all my brother still currently does jiu-jitsu. We started together. Nice. My sister did it for a little bit, and then she stopped. She wants to get back into it now, but but my brother still trains. He's a purple belt. He's pretty tough. He was not as consistent as me. Like he would stop and then continue, but he trains right now pretty much, you know, all the time. And so he's actually been over here to John's and stuff to train. Nice. Yeah. So we did that together, and I got into jiu-jitsu. I was about 12 years old. I think he was like 9. And we basically never stopped since then. I had one little hiatus when I was like an early, like probably like 13 or 14. But then I came back and I haven't really stopped since. So I found jiu-jitsu when I grew up in Miami. So then I ended up going temporarily to Houston, Texas, because I had a friend out there. Okay. That was part of my affiliation. So I started training at Hilly and Gracie's. So they had an affiliation in Houston. So a guy that I knew that had moved out there, he invited me out there to go train. They had like more competitors and stuff like that. And this was about the time that I was like, okay, I kind of want to like start doing jiu-jitsu. Like I'm like 19. I don't have that like
something other plan.
That thing. Yeah, exactly.
You had graduated high school already?
Yeah. And so I didn't have that like direction that I was talking about. Like I kind of had it with jiu-jitsu. Like I knew I wanted to do that, but I had no idea like what
the purpose
was.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Did your family want you to go to school, or
yeah, for sure. Yeah, there was a lot of like then there was a lot of like trials and tribulations like internally like that. But so I knew that I wanted to compete. So I was like, okay, let me go compete and do worlds. And then this guy was like, okay, you should come and train for like, whatever, a month or two. And at the time, my family had left Miami. So I was living on my uncle's couch in Fort Lauderdale. And they were super cool. Like they were like super supportive of like whatever I wanted to do. They had like 3 like younger kids. We were in like a small apartment. They were like, yeah, you can stay with us. Like it was like they were super awesome.
Wow.
And so I ended up like just packing a bag and going to Houston with no return ticket. And my plan was I'm going to train and do worlds and like, let's see how this goes. So I left all my stuff at their house.
Oh, wow.
They still have all of my stuff.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I never went back to pick it up.
Wow.
Yeah. So I like packed a bag. I went to Houston. And then I ended up just staying there. Fast forward to worlds, I lose my first round. Like it was just like awful.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
So I do this like training camp where I'm like sleeping at the gym, training every single day. And we had a few competitive athletes over there, but nobody nobody that ever went further than like a blue or purple belt, like local level. But it was better than what I had at home. Like it was more like a hobbyist. And at least it was like that jump that I was like, okay, I made a decision. And I was like, now I have to like, be accountable for whatever happens next. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I ended up losing my first round. I go back and now I'm like, okay, do I go back home? My uncle at the time, he had a restaurant. So I was like, do I go work for him? Do I find a job over there? Do I continue? Like, what do I do?
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, let me stay in Houston and just keep figuring out. So I start competing there like at a local level. And, my coach at the time when I was living in Houston, he was he used to be part of GF team. And so we're getting closer to the next world championships. This is already like, say almost a year has passed. And, I'm like, okay, like, let's try to do this again. So he was like, man, you should go to, you should train at a competitive gym. Like realistically, like now there's not a lot of competitive guys anymore. You don't have really good training partners.
Wow, you don't hear of that too often. That's pretty wild for him to like volunteer that up.
Yeah. No, he's the best. He's the best. And at the time I was even living with him. And so,
wow.
Yeah. So I did a little training camp. Like we spent a couple weeks living at the gym, came back, worked a couple little jobs. I ended up working at the gym for a little bit at the front desk, and he lived like right next to the gym. So I was living with him, like on his, like he had like a 1-bedroom apartment, him and his wife. And I was like living like on the living room floor, like on an air mattress.
Wow.
Yeah. And
how long was that?
I lived with him almost the entire time that I was there. Wow. And then I also spent some time with, you probably know Mike Columbus.
Yeah.
We used to train at the same gym. So he's another guy that I spent a lot of time living with.
Wow.
And so these guys helped me a lot while I was out there. And so fast forward, I want to do worlds. So he was like, you should train at a competitive gym, this and that. And he was like, I come from GF team. I used to train with Rodolfo. I used to love watching Rodolfo. He was like one of my favorite guys. And so like if you wanted to do a training camp over there, I can talk to the guys and send you over. So I saved money from working at the gym. And I was okay on, I can't remember what the date was, but I wanted to set myself like 3 months to just go to Brazil and train. So I was like, and I'd never been to Brazil and I always wanted to go.
And you didn't speak any Portuguese, I'm assuming.
I understood it, but I was never, I understood it because I had up until then, all my teachers had been Brazilian.
Okay.
And like they barely spoke English.
You're learning through osmosis, whether you like
exactly.
it or not. Okay.
Yeah. So I was picking it up. And so I ended up going down to Brazil, training there for 3 months, competing. And that Worlds, I did a little bit better. I lost, I think it was my quarterfinals, my 4th match.
These are in the gi, right?
Yeah, gi Worlds, yeah. I had never competed NoGi.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. You were training NoGi like once a week or something. Yeah.
I'd done like a local tournament here and there, but nothing, nothing big. And so I lost my 4th match to Tarek Hopstock.
Wow.
By like 1 advantage. It was super close. He got me with a Tarek Plata.
Of course.
And he got the advantage for that.
Wow.
And then, so I ended up losing, but I had good matches all up until then. I think I submitted everybody leading up to that one. And then after that, with my initial team, there was some drama about me going and training at a different gym and this and that. So I ended up making the decision to leave my team and then go and train with GF team in Ohio with Gutenberg and Dante at the time when they were living there. Yeah.
Okay.
So I was like really going hard on like,
Yeah.
let me try to train and compete.
Yeah.
So they had
So
like a
you're
little
Dante and Gutenberg. Those are like your main two training partners.
Yeah, because
right?
when I was in Brazil, I had met Gutenberg, and you know, he spoke English. We ended up making making a friendship, and then he invited me. He was like, "Hey, I have like a bunch of guys like living at the house over here in Ohio. Like, you should come train with us." So I went over there. I trained with them for probably like 5 or 6 months.
Okay.
And then so I was training with them. Like, it was me, Mauricio Oliveira, Gutenberg, and Max Jimenez and Dante.
Wow.
So it was those 5,
That's
and we were training
room.
every single day.
Yeah.
And so I got a lot better training there. But my dad, so remember I told you I was living with my uncle. So my dad had moved to North Carolina. And so I didn't really have any way of like making money or, out there. Yeah. And the training was super tough, but I was like, okay, my dad was like, you should come and live with us. There's this guy that's like really good that lives in North Carolina. I was like, okay, who is it? He's like, Lucas Lepri. I was like, oh yeah, that guy's pretty good.
Yeah. He's all right. He's good enough for me to stop by.
And so I had gone to visit my dad, trained with Lucas. He was super nice. And so made that connection there. I ended up going back home, where my dad was, his new home. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
you're how old at this point?
I think I'm like 22 or 23.
Okay.
Something like
so
that.
Like, I've been a couple of years.
Yeah. And then that's how I ended up at Lucas's. And then so that after Lucas's, I spent 2 years living at training at Lucas's, got my brown belt, did worlds, got silver. Wow. And then he was like, hey, Bernardo Faria is looking for an instructor. Do you want to go up? And he's looking for a guy for like 2 or 3 months just to fill in while he gets his next guy the visa. So I end up going over there for a couple months. Guy never gets the visa. Time goes on and on and on, and then I end up just staying there.
And that was that your first time like making money consistently through teaching?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So you weren't teaching at Lepri's, and then that was just an offer like, hey, go up and teach for Bernardo.
Yeah, and then every single time like that I would make one of these moves, I always made it with like an intention to like go somewhere else. So like when I moved to Lucas's, I was working a bunch of jobs in North Carolina. Like I was working at a moving company. I was doing I had just bought a car, so I was doing Uber. I had a buddy of mine that was training at the school that was a lawyer, and his wife was a lawyer. So they had like a little law firm that they were starting up. So I started working for them.
Okay.
I was teaching kids classes, like doing a bunch of different things. And then so finally I had this opportunity to go teach. And every month that rolled by that they needed me for another month, I was like, oh, this is perfect. Like I'm just like doing privates, like doing all this stuff.
Going,
yeah. And I was just a brown belt.
Yeah.
And so I ended up just staying, training there. There was literally not a single person there that even competed.
Wow.
And so I was training. I ended up winning NoGi Worlds, training out of there.
Why do you think that you were able to make a big jump in competing when you weren't like, this was the time where you weren't with a bunch of competitors? You think it was the teaching, or you had your own training design?
Yeah, I think it was the teaching and so like I kind of learned how to train properly through training with Lucas, because every time that I would only train before, it was just like hard sparring.
Right.
And I was learning technique, but everything that I was doing up until that point was very instinctual. It was not intentional.
Right.
So
right.
I was just reacting. So every time that I got a move, like I never really understood why I got that move.
Right.
It was just like instinct. Like I just knew what to do. And then I I could watch a move, see like little details, but I couldn't like in my head tell you exactly what was happening. Makes sense. People would ask me questions all the time. Like, hey, how did you do this? How did you do that? And then I would be like, okay, let me think about it. Cause like, I never really thought about it. I just do it.
Right.
And then so I started going to Lucas's. There was a little bit more structure, and then he was also like at the peak of his career at the time, and so I really got to see like a professional athlete like in his like realm. And so I saw like how dedicated he was. Like he kind of took me under his wing too. Like he took me to do his strength and conditioning workouts. He used to give me a lot of advice, things like that. And so I kind of figured like by that point I had accumulated enough information that I could figure out how to train. And so like I kind of took his training program and started doing the exact same thing at Bernardo's.
Got
And when he started, like, he didn't have a lot of training partners either. Like, some competitive guys started to come out afterwards, but when he started winning all his world titles, he had his gym was like all like lower belts and like white belts and stuff.
Right. And especially you said he's in North Carolina,
Yeah.
so it's like
there's no one there.
It's not really, it's not like SoCal or like Austin now, where you can have a gym and you're teaching or getting things on the ground, and then every morning you drive down the street and go train with these world champions.
Exactly. Yeah. So I did that. I won NoGi Worlds. I did pretty good there. And then after that, Bernardo was like, "Hey, do you want to just stay here? Like, I don't think we're going to be able to get this guy his visa." And so I was like, "Yeah, no problem. Like, for me, this is great." And then I talked to Lucas about it, and he was like, "Man, as long as you're, doing what you like doing and you're making money, like, why not? Like, just do it." And I was like, "Okay, perfect." Because I was concerned about, like, am I going to be able to train in a good place? So he was super supportive about that. And then I'm in Boston. This is like probably more than 10 minutes.
No, it's good. It's good. This answers a lot of the questions I was going to ask. This is perfect.
Yeah. And so I'm in Boston. And then, so obviously Bernardo's the co-founder of BJJ Fanatics. So that's how I get to meet Gordon and John. And then we make that connection. And then now I'm here.
And now you're here. Magic. So how'd you end up, obviously you can move to Texas. Was it something you had thought about for a long time and just kind of like made the decision and left? How did that happen?
To move here?
Yeah.
So what happened was, so when I ended up coming to Boston, like, the big thing was, like, I was going to come for a little bit and then go back just to teach. Then I was going to go back to Lucas's because I wanted to be a part of, like, I wanted to compete. Like, that was like, at that point it was like set that I wanted to do this full time. And so, but I ended up staying in Boston. So I met Gordon first, because he came into film, and then, he wanted to train. Actually, he needed to do like rolling footage and stuff for one of his instructional. So I ended up rolling with him. But then, he liked me as a training partner. So we kept training like almost every time that he was there. And then, John needed, so I had gone in and I had replaced an instructor at Bernardo's who had left. And so that was John's uke. And so John needed a new uke. So they were like, "Hey, do you want a uke for John?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." To me, it was like, I didn't really know much about John up until that point. Right. I knew who he was, and I knew guys that had trained with him, but I didn't really follow them religiously. Right. And so
it's also different a couple of years ago. Like, this is not like current day.
Yeah, for sure. It was kind of like at the beginning of their like instructionals, like coming out and things like that. Yeah. And so, so I was like, "Yeah, sure. Like, I'll uke for him." So I went there, I started ukeing for him, and he liked me as an uke too, like pretty much immediately. Anybody who's ever uked for John knows it's like the hardest job on the planet.
I've heard. Yeah. I've heard it's rough.
Yeah. And so we had a good...
My favorite videos are Placino.
Yeah.
So it's...
Yes. And so I was his uke for his gi series. And we had a good like kind of
connection.
Yeah, as a uke and as a practice partner and stuff. And then I would go train with them intermittently, like in New York.